everyone. I'm Darian Gold, and welcome to All Things Pilates, Season 6. As we dig deeper into the life of a contrologist, this season's guest list shares what the Pilates methodology can offer to anyone who desires health and wellness. On this show, we'll explore, seek, and investigate what's possible when we incorporate contrology into our lives. Classical Pilates apparatus has become a thing. And why? Because Joe's original method and his equipment designs have revolutionized what it means to be fit. Contrology, which Joe referred to his method, consists of mat work and exercises practiced on spring-loaded apparatus. The leading manufacturer of classical Pilates equipment is Gratz Industries Incorporated, originally a metal fabrication company founded in the 1920s in New York City. Fast forward to a serendipitous day in 1968. Romana Krzyzanowska, a Joe Pilates disciple, who would go on to develop one of the first certification programs and determined to keep contrology alive, met Donald Gratz, the heir to Gratz Industries. Though unfamiliar with this type of exercise equipment, Donald, charmed by Romana, agreed to build and manufacture Joe's designs that she would supply. It was the birth of what we recognize as classical Pilates apparatus. Now, in 2024, Gratz Industries is at a pivotal time in its 100-plus years of existence. Here to talk about the company and their vision for it are the two new co-owners, John Riccitiello and Elizabeth Osterman. Hi, John and Elizabeth.
Hi.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Welcome to All Things Pilates.
Thank you.
All right. First things first. How and when did you begin studying Pilates?
So I think I've got what I think many would think of as a cliche story for getting started in Pilates. I've been an athlete all my life, and athletes in athletics come with lots of injuries. And in 2002, I had a particularly unfortunate skiing accident that was such that I damaged my spine and found it pretty difficult to walk. After lots of advice from, the medical community, I crushed a couple vertebrae in my lower back and herniated two of them.
Oh.
And at one point, the doctors were talking to me about surgery going in from the front to get to my spine, which wasn't terribly appealing, and it didn't have a great prognosis. And the doctor told me that if I could strengthen my core enough, I might not need that surgery at some point. So I tried a few things. I ultimately landed on Pilates. Initially, I wasn't with a classical instructor, but I ultimately met a fabulous classical trainer in San Francisco by the name of Alicia Doyle, now married, but Alicia Doyle then. And that started my journeys. That was quite a long time ago. Since then, because my business travel brought me all over the world, I ended up working with instructors in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, Frankfurt, Geneva, London, Paris, literally everywhere, Korea at one point. And so I managed to train with some amazing people, among them Shari in New York.
Romana's daughter.
One time, quite a long time ago. And so I've been doing it a long time, and frankly, it's an important part of my life.
When the doctor said core, did you even know what it was a he, I'm assuming. Did he?
Yeah, it was
Did he explain what core meant?
It's hard to collapse memory that effectively going back more than 20 years. I quickly learned it was core. I think he probably just said I had to strengthen my stomach muscles.
Yes. Elizabeth.
So John was obsessed and is still obsessed. And so I couldn't help but curious.
Oh, John started first.
Yes, he started first. And so about a year ago, I was like, I've got to give this a try. So I'm very much a beginner, but I'm loving it. And I especially enjoyed the time when I realized the difference between classical and non. I didn't appreciate that.
Oh,
before.
say more about that.
Well, just I went to a class type Pilates where, there was a college student teaching it, and we were using the reformer up and down, and I thought that was Pilates. And then I had the pleasure of having a lesson with a gal named Colleen in Santa Barbara that John connected me with. And before she even let me move the reformer, everything had to be perfect with my spine, my feet, like every little inch. And then I understood what core meant and learning all the terms. And what a difference that made. I mean, I really felt like, wow, I was strengthening where before I was just going up and down this piece of equipment.
So in the beginning, you didn't necessarily feel any difference?
No, not at all.
But John was so obsessed that you wanted to get on board with him.
Yes.
And then he said, okay, I need to introduce you.
Yes. And I had 3 lessons in a row, 3 days in a row, which was wonderful because if I had just done one and then left it, I might have not appreciated it. But by the time I got to the 3rd lesson, I think that's when things started clicking. So I feel just so excited to now be a part of it.
Does your posture feel different?
It does. Well, you can't see me slouching right now towards the phone here, but yes, for sure. Yeah. I mean, even when I'm driving in the car, putting my foot on the gas pedal, like I notice that my core feels different. So it's a wonderful feeling.
It's magical.
I would say I'm now becoming addicted, not obsessed like John. He takes it to a new level, but definitely a fan.
Amazing. Well, at some point you decide to get your own apparatus. Whose idea was that? Let's assume it's John's.
That was John.
Yeah. And there was a time when I was and I'm doing it now too, but there was a time I was taking several hours a week of training and loving it. And, you get to the point sometimes when if you skip a day,
you feel off.
You just feel off, like something isn't right in the world. And so then I was doing mat and between, because I could do that at home by myself. And I didn't have any apparatus at home. And I did have room at home for a studio. And so we dedicated a room back and built out a studio. And then more recently, that was smaller. More recently, Elizabeth and I we built a gym in our home in California and a larger space. It'd be a good large size professional studio if you wanted to make the comparisons. And about 3 years ago, we finished that gym and we wanted to populate it with my favorite Pilates equipment, Pilates apparatus. And so that was sort of round 2, and we were very much crafting that together.
And you knew at that point which company you were going with?
Well, earlier I'd mentioned that I trained in many cities, and I have. I originally found most of my trainers through what was then the True Pilates, New York True Pilates website, where I was looking for graded classical Pilates instructors that were certified through their program. And so I generally trained on Gratz. But I've trained on literally everything because there isn't a studio everywhere in the world where I could find an instructor available during my business travels that had Gratz. Look, I admire our competitors, and I'm sure we'll talk about that perhaps in this interview today or maybe another time. But for me, I started with Gratz with people that were one level removed from the elders in the Pilates community. And it's somewhere between the practice that you just can't get that exact feeling, doesn't get deep enough. I can't get an exact position. And part of it is just the feeling, and I'll have to admit, part of it is just bias because it's what I started with. It feels like my first baseball mitt. It feels like my first pair of skis. There's something about it. It's like grandma's cooking for me.
It's true.
It's sort of something home for me. So it had to be Gratz.
Understood.
Although it did infuriate me when they told me how long it would take to build.
Oh, and we are going to talk about that. But for sure. But first, will you share with our listeners a little bit about your own business background that gives you the qualifications to be able to come in and take over Gratz Industries?
I guess I'll go first. So I have a career in tech, 25 years running HR for small, medium, and large companies. And that included, HR, recruiting, compensation, real estate, equity. And then I also have a background in Six Sigma. And I would say that is most relevant here in the production, certainly helpful. And then I also owned a small business. So I have that entrepreneurial background as well.
John.
All right. Well, then I'm going to build a little bit for Elizabeth. I fell in love with her for a set of reasons a long time ago, but also, again, when she created her small company, it was the manufacturer of my favorite pickle. So won national awards with that, focused on extraordinary high quality product. So she also comes from making really good things to an exacting quality standard that won national awards. So I'm proud of her, beyond just the tech side. So my background's a little different. I came up through business. At one point, I was the CEO of Wilson Sporting Goods. A lot of the manufacturing I did there looks a lot like the factory here at Gratz. So I've been through a lot of those kinds of things. But then I've been a CEO of one thing or another for the better part of 25 years, whether it was Wilson Sporting Goods or Electronic Arts for the video game fans out there. I was CEO of a company called Unity Technologies, which makes an underlying technology that most of your listeners won't know. And I founded a private equity firm at one point. And so lots of different things. We've both been business leaders.
How long have you two actually known each other?
About 8 years now, 9 years.
So you meet each other, you're already very established, obviously.
Yes. And someone mentioned the other day that our love language is running businesses and accomplishing. And so it is kind of funny that here we are.
Oh, it's lovely. It's a lovely story. All right, big question. How did you go from being customers of Gratz Industries to being the owners of the company?
Well, first off, let me just add one thing. As we became owners, we changed the name of the company from Gratz Industries to Gratz Pilates.
Okay.
And so when you find us on the web, it's now everywhere it's Gratz Pilates.
Oh.
And so that was a small nod to the fact that there's a shift in ownership, and we're not planning industries outside of Pilates here. We really want to make this what it should be when it grows up. But this is actually kind of a fun story. So I placed an order for this most recent Pilates studio at home for Elizabeth and I in, I think it's early 22. And they gave me their story about 40 weeks. It would take 40 weeks to get what I was looking for. At the end of 40 weeks, they sent me an email and said it's going to be another 20 weeks. And so I kind of just grumbled and took it because I knew I wanted Gratz equipment and Gratz apparatus. It was exactly what I wanted, and I was willing to wait a little bit longer. And then I got another email saying it was going to be longer still. And this is an experience that I think many of your listeners will have had themselves. And it was incredibly frustrating. And so I ended up tracking David Rosenkrantz down, and I gave him a call, and I wanted help with my order. He was generous with his time, and that led to a little bit of a relationship. We chatted and talked. And at one point, Elizabeth and I were talking. We thought it might be fun when we're on the East Coast to visit Philadelphia and visit basically my Mecca and to see what this all looks like.
Yeah.
So we did, and visited with David and walked the factory floor and got to see things. And it was very clear to us that this is a company that is missing out on the opportunity to sort of be better at faster manufacturing at the high quality standard they wanted. And she and I, Elizabeth and I, had a long conversation and thought maybe we should step in with investment and expertise around some of those issues to see if we could help.
When you were walking and having the tour right away, because of your background in factories and all these businesses, did you just know inside? You went, oh, wait a second.
The pattern recognition was instantaneous for both of us. Mm-hmm. So when she was saying Six Sigma, you might not know what that means, but it's a very disciplined approach to manufacturing things and to doing so to a particular standard. And I've walked literally the factory floors of 100 different companies and those that I run. We could see, so David's an artist. And as an artist, he knew how to keep up the quality, but didn't have the financial resources or the background for scaling this company. As we walked it, it was like
mom and pop. It's been a mom and pop business from the beginning.
Yeah. It was clear. And maybe you'll tell the part was going down to visit Roberta.
Oh, yeah. Then we went to New Orleans and met with Roberta. It was just a wonderful opportunity to hear the stories and the history. And John and I really connected with her on that. And we love the fact that it's 100-year-old company and started, with such history. And she was looking for some help, possibly someone to take over, but wanted the right person that could appreciate the history, appreciate the need for the quality, all those things. And we didn't need any convincing. I mean, we were believers. So it was really just a great opportunity and match.
So did David suggest, he said, well, I really like the two of you. I think this is a good match. I think it's time to meet Roberta.
I don't know if it was quite that way. I think we probably initially asked for that because we were starting to build towards this idea that's now been manifest.
And she was welcoming.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Very
first
much,
off, she is one classy lady.
Yes.
She is as admirable a woman as you'll ever find. And she has a sharp mind and sharp opinions and a point of view.
Yes.
And I think it was some combination of serendipity and destiny that we were exactly what she needed. And she and David were exactly what we needed to make this come together. And nobody had to move very far. We've told you what we brought. With the resources they had, any number of leaders in David's role might have said, let's save money by making a cheaper product that we sell for the same price. Let's try to go to a mass market channel, I don't know, sell on Amazon and not cater to the sometimes persnickety owners of classical studios. There are easier ways to run a business. And that's not what he did. He super served that customer. He ensured that the quality remained at the very top. There's not a single shred of paper in this building of a cost savings measure that went in place. And so had that not been the case, we wouldn't have been interested.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was one of those things where it's like we didn't know we were looking for each other, but we clearly should have been looking for each other because when we met, it was obvious.
And then Roberta and David's roles, how do they change?
Well, Roberta was never an operator. She was the investor.
Yeah.
And so she continues to be an investor in that role. And David's part of our team. He's focusing on the community, primarily the classical studios that, frankly, are the lifeblood of this company.
And has always been like that.
That's right.
Gratz never really had to do anything because Romana was there. And whenever the subject of apparatus came up, whether it was a continuing education course or whatever, it was only Gratz. I didn't know there was anything else out there. So that legacy continues.
Yeah, but she's amazing. I was in New York City the other day visiting with some of our studio partners there. And we stopped and had lunch with her. And she's a fount of wisdom. You can imagine in a year like this one, opinions on all sorts of things. Took us to a lovely restaurant right around the corner from her apartment. And of course, her apartment is furnished with lots of old Gratz Industries designs that are absolutely beautiful in relic sort of museum form. And I don't know how well you know her, but everyone should. It's a treasure to get to know her.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Gratz Pilates separates from the metal fabrication part, or has that gone away and it's just apparatus?
So Gratz has not produced furniture in some years. We still do all the same welding and grinding and metal fabrication in support of the Pilates apparatus. We just don't make furniture any longer. Although I'm sitting in a Gratz manufactured chair here today.
You get no requests?
Occasionally, but it's not a business for us any longer.
Understood.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We're really committed to reducing the lead times.
Oh, say more about that.
Our focus is on production. And John and I are very disciplined on that. We hear 1,000 ideas and we're focusing the team on production because right now it's at an unacceptable level. And so that's our focus.
And to build on that, like my natural place in the world is the kind of person, Elizabeth too. There's nothing that would be more fun. Like, my daughter lives in Naples. This past year, her son and daughter were in different cities in Europe, studying abroad. We would have loved to have spent months and weeks and years visiting studio owners around the world and talking the game of Pilates and maybe sneaking in more training than I would otherwise get on vacation because I'd probably have a slightly easier way to meet all these people. We're not doing that. We're actually not spending, this is going to sound a little counterintuitive, we're not spending that much time with our customers. We are spending our time on the factory floor. We're spending our time hiring people. Last week, I didn't even know the type of equipment that was necessary. It's an 8-foot bed table for welding. We needed 4 of those, and they're quite pricey. But so shopping those with our new head of manufacturing, our job right now is 100% about scaling production so that our customers don't have to wait a year or more to get their product. It's crazy that they have to wait that long. There will be a day where we travel the world and support all the connections. Luckily, we have David to keep that going, but we're here in Philadelphia focused on factory and on manufacturing.
Well, what is your goal in terms of lead time? So not 18 months, not 12 months. Ooh, a 2. I see 2 fingers up.
2?
Look, I think in a best case situation, our customers should be able to expect that they can order a product and it'll be delivered. And she means 2 months. I kind of think 2 weeks.
No, I meant 2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay.
Oh, 2 weeks? No, I think people are falling off their chair right now.
Well, look, this is a complex question, but let me detour just a little bit. So when you're making a product for somebody in the United States, an enormous amount of work goes into making a maple frame for a Reformer or a Cadillac if you want the wood version. And it's literally, dozens of hours in grinding, cutting the aluminum frame.
Which one is easier?
So they're both hugely high labor works of love in many ways. Now, but here's the thing. I know that 10 people are going to order an aluminum Reformer next week, and 7 are going to order a maple frame next week, and they're going to order them the week after, and the week after, and the week after, and the week after. And when we shorten lead times, I might actually start ordering more. So we know that those are going to order those. I don't have to start making your Reformer frame, in theory, the day you order it. It's a continuous part of the business we're in. And up until now, we would take an order and then purchase the materials and start that process. Or because there's so much of a backlog of orders in front of you, start it 9 months from now. And so what we want to do is manufacture to collapse that backlog and then also get ahead where we're making these things. We may be partway building your order without you knowing it the day you make it. And so that's the company we're building towards. And then it gets even more complex for international markets. So markets like Korea and Europe, they have additional challenges around import duties and shipping times. And we're going to turn to as soon as we're done collapsing the lead times here while raising quality. The next thing we want to tackle is all of the international markets, how we can make it fast and easy for them to get their product. Now, Philadelphia is going to be our global manufacturing hub, but there's a lot of smart things that you can do to make that a lot faster for our customers outside the US. And we want to do that too.
Hey everyone, want to level up your teaser? When I'm not interviewing or editing, I'm helping students just like you get to the next level. If you'd like to understand the Contrology technique, come learn from me, whether online or in person. Just know I'm here and happy to help. Now, back to the interview. Would you have showrooms around the world?
I mean, showrooms are an interesting question. I think so many of the Gratz studios out there are literally 100% Gratz. And a number of studio owners have written me or called me and said, we'd like to be a showroom. And our answer is, we'd love for you to be a showroom. And once I fix manufacturing, we're really happy to talk to you about it. And that's Elizabeth's points about that sort of maniacal focus on fixing this thing. Yeah. If we get drawn to too many other things, this will never get solved. This is, make no mistake, this is not an easy issue to solve.
Yeah, I will say the employees here, we were delighted. The commitment, they're so hardworking, so loyal to this company. And it's really been a pleasure to get to know all of them. They just did not have good process. They didn't have a good surplus of parts. So now that we have a manufacturing leader, we're able to start to address all of that, which is so much more rewarding for them. I mean, they get endorphins and a little spring in their step when they go home and they know they've built more than half-built items sitting on the floor. So it's been a real treat to work with them and see them be able to accomplish more. And you can tell they love that.
Of course, one of the first things Elizabeth did with her background was the company didn't pay benefits for. We do now. August 1, we started that. Yeah. And so those kinds of things give people the opportunity to build a career. And some of the skills that are required here are not ordinary skills. It may seem trivial to look at a ladder barrel and look at how the fabric tucks into the wood on the side. That is really hard to do. A spine corrector is really hard to do. Every staple has to line up. The corners can't have frayed edges. It's got to be exactly right. The work on welding is extraordinarily difficult. And so it's hard to find people that can do those things as well as we'd like them to. And we want them to stay forever when we find them. And so things like benefits will help. Mm-hmm. But these are like long-term investments, for the payout for this community of your listeners, really, over the next years and decades.
Do you think 2020 played a big role in the supply and demand issues, and it just took what already was an issue with Gratz even further back because it was so hard to get a hold of supplies?
Yeah, I would say a number of things. I do know just from the history, they moved from New York to Philadelphia, and every time you have a move, that's a huge transition. And so there were some challenges there. And then COVID was incredibly hard on so many companies, especially those that rely on employees to be physically there. Whereas like a tech company, they could successfully work at home. So I think it was super hard here. And yes, as you said, some of the supply and that was challenging. And I think it's just been back to back, just hard to recover and get traction.
What are your thoughts about your competitors in the Pilates world, like Balanced Body or Peak Pilates?
First off, I've trained on all their equipment, so I know it pretty well. I do a lot of skiing, and sadly, I couldn't find a Gratz studio in Park City, for example. So it's one of our competitors. I've spent time on all of it, and I would make these observations. The first point would be, we are more about Pilates and classical Pilates than we are sort of really about like, you should buy my product over there because we're 10% better at something. What I mean by that is, I think the world's a better place when people are fit. I believe people are more fit if they engage in Pilates. And I believe people are particularly fit, mind and body, when they're doing classical Pilates. And if it was just Gratz and companies like Peak and Balanced Body didn't exist, the industry would be much smaller than it is today. So the world would be less well off. And so there's something good that they're there. The second thing, it's great to have good competition. It means it won't be easy. We have to do great things to earn the loyalty of our customers. So and we have no disdain for them at all. In fact, we thank them for growing the industry as they have in the years we couldn't meet the demand that we have for our own product. So there's no negative feeling there. Now, we do want to do more, and we want to grow, and we want to meet the needs of more trainers around the world, more instructors and teachers around the world. But frankly, I think the world needs more classically trained instructors too. And so, I look forward to the day when the industry is bigger and it's serving more people and more people are benefiting from knowing and practicing classical Pilates.
Yeah, I would add to that. I'd like to say we're a fan of the industry. And John and I have never been worried about competition. It ups everyone's game. And, some of the competitors, good for them, right? They've scaled their companies. We believe in the history of this company and the quality, and we've got a lot of work to do, and we're really focused on that.
Speaking of competition, is Gratz Pilates interested in developing business relationships with teachers who recommend your apparatus and who might have suggestions for equipment or services that you offer? Will that be somewhere down the road, perhaps?
Well, one of the things I think is kind of incredibly true is the thing that probably supports Gratz as a business outside this building more than anything is that classically trained teachers more often than not recommend Gratz. And I think a lot of them historically have done that with some trepidation because they know that when they make the recommendation, they know that their apprentices or their recently granted certified teachers are probably not going to get the equipment in time to open their studio, and there's going to be a lot of frustration. So we do want to invest a lot in the community of our time and energy, and in some ways, dollar investment. But the first thing we have to do to meet that need is for someone like you to know with certainty that we will be the best choice for the person you're recommending it to, and they'll get it on time, and the follow through on service is going to be exceptional. So that's what we have to do. Now, we will definitely form business relationships with, studio owners around the world. I don't know what those are going to look like yet. And I would almost rather work on that than manufacturing, because manufacturing is hard and gritty and dirty and difficult. That's fun and interesting, and it might involve a glass of wine in a restaurant someplace. But we'll get to that. But if I were like you are, or sort of a high reputation leader in the industry, and I showed up talking about a business relationship, the thing I would expect you to say to us, why should I have a business relationship with anybody that can't give me the apparatus quickly to quality with follow through on service? And I'd say, you're right. I should go back to Philadelphia and start working on manufacturing.
Okay, understood. But there's so much more potential now that you two are at the helm. Obviously, the sky's the limit, I think.
Yes.
And you already have loyal fans and followers just because of the history, and because those of us who work on the apparatus, especially if we've tried other apparatus, just like John is saying, sometimes you can't articulate exactly what it feels like. You just know it's right. And when you get on other pieces of equipment that are not Gratz, it's different. It's different. It's hard to find the right words. And just like John said, it's like coming home. And I think that feeling is what will help build your brand and the next 100 years, really.
Well, if I do Pilates, maybe I'll get to live some of those years, at least more of them. I'm not sure I get another 100 though.
Okay, speaking of apparatus, I've been wanting to know this, and other people have asked me. For the future, are there any plans in adding other lesser known pieces that Joe designed, like the junior reformer, definitely the pedipole with the seat, and maybe even the portable guillotine?
So on that, I really love the idea. And Alyssa,
we're focused on core apparatus now and reducing the lead times.
Personally, I would love a
I know it's not a sexy focus, but it's the best answer for the Pilates community.
That's okay. Your apparatus is sexy. It's the sexiest.
I think so.
You don't have to worry about that. But perhaps in the future, as everything has become this well-oiled machine, you might consider these other pieces.
Yeah, and we'd love to hear from your listeners about that. You know, if they want to share their ideas along those lines. I mean, I personally would like a pedipole with a seat. I looked it up after you mentioned it a while back, and I didn't know such a thing existed. I would certainly like to try it. So I think there'll be a day for all of that. But we're stuck on chapter 1.
Speaking of Gratz Industries, apparatus, and certification programs, does Gratz Pilates sponsor conferences, or are there conferences and then you are asked to supply the apparatus as an adjunct, or do you create it?
You know, I think they've done it various ways in the past. We've got one conference coming up that was a pre-commit sponsorship that we're excited to attend and support, but there's no pattern of how this has been done. So, I mean, we just bought the company June 5th. You know the answer. We're focused on our production. But yeah, that's absolutely something we'll look at.
Right. So this is another facet.
It is.
But there's probably 20 Gratz studio owners, and they're not labeled Gratz, their name on the studio, that have reached out to me and David and Elizabeth about conferences they want to run and symposiums they want to do and where they want us to show up for training to facilitate something. And that's without reaching out at all. Eventually, I want to do all of that and reach out, because I don't think there's any better way to demonstrate how great Gratz apparatus is than in the hands of a master teacher. And I kind of believe that certain industries start with the centering point of a master, and it kind of comes out in rings after that. And so that's the place we want to be. And I think we kind of already are. A lot of times, you know, I was looking at some photos on our own website about people running symposiums, and we're involved in it all. And it's all Gratz equipment. It'd be nice if there was a little bit of branding in there somewhere, but we do want to dive into that.
Do you have a brand advisor or manager?
So we've hired a few people since we've been here. Most of the people we've hired, like 80% of everybody we've hired so far, works on the factory floor. That's what we're focused on. We've hired a head of manufacturing who built museum quality furniture for his entire career. And that's important because we don't want anybody here that would imagine making a product that should or would go to any other quality level than the best it could possibly be. But yes, we brought in a marketeer, someone I've worked with and Elizabeth worked with in the past, that will help us work on these things, although that's sort of my background too. So I'm very excited about that. You know, the weird part about branding, though, is sometimes if your brand is right, the most important thing is not to screw with it. And, you know, ours has got a pretty natural place in the universe, which is Joe and Romana and Gratz are like the three names that almost anybody that rose in this industry would immediately associate with the foundation of the industry. So most of our branding work is done. Our job now is to show up with apparatus.
White glove. I think you were saying something about white glove.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a big believer, and we're by no means ready for this today, but we have to find a way, if you're building a studio, to show up and the equipment is left perfectly assembled, ready to start and ready to go. I think that is something we certainly want to do, but we're not quite there yet.
So that kind of just ties into my last question, which is where you actually see taking this company in your mind's eye. Once you have this solid foundation and your factory is buzzing and people are getting their apparatus in 2 weeks, oh my goodness. I mean, people are going to freak out. Seriously. Do you have an idea of where it's actually going, like the next place, that next chapter?
I'll start and maybe Elizabeth will build on it. So first, getting to that production speed, while maintaining or improving quality. There are some things with quality I think we can do that'll help us, and we can do a little bit better. And so getting those things done.
Wait, can you give an example on one of the pieces of equipment?
Sure. You ever look at the little wrinkle on when you put your head down and the flap that comes out?
Oh my God, yes.
You know the wrinkle I'm talking about?
Yes.
All right, that shouldn't be like that.
No. That would be awesome.
I'm focusing on really little things, but there's lots of them. You see where we put the Gratz clock on the side
Yes.
of a window chair?
Yes.
First off, you can't read it. Secondly, it's got a fax number on it.
That's hilarious.
Have you used the fax in the last 25 years? And third, I've snagged my socks on it like at least 15 times. I don't know. There's small things everywhere, but I also think there are some things that'll help us, lead towards a little bit less maintenance in terms of some things we can do. And I could give you a long list of those, but we're frankly not going to change much until we fix the speed. But we also want to get to the quality. So to answer your question, I think about it more this way. We're maniacally focused on production, speed, getting it to the customer when they need it, how they want it, and then following that up with a big step up in service. That's going to expose us to thousands of customers around the world. And we want to hear from them about what else they want from us to support the community. I've got some ideas. Elizabeth's got some ideas. Might incorporate a portable guillotine or a pedipole with a seat. Might be other things, but we're not going to stray far from anything that's sort of not on the pure line of classical Pilates, the best instructors in supporting the business in their best interest. That's where we want to go.
Yeah, and I would add, after we nail the production, the service John mentioned, and I'm just a big believer in the best way to delight customers is to delight our employees and have our own employees experience what excellence means for themselves as an employee.
100%. Yes.
They don't know any different. That's their experience. So that's something I'm super passionate about. And to me, that would be something I would want to address in full force after we nail the production.
I love the idea of excellence because that's how we teach the work. Nothing less than excellent. Why? Otherwise, why do it? Your body deserves to have an excellent experience consistently.
Agreed.
John, I liked one thing that you said in the pre-interview, and that was somehow as you get all the wrinkles out, headrests included, you were talking about having an email list, all your customers, so there's more of a communication. If somebody ordered something 10 years ago, there's a note if there was any issue with that one piece of equipment, for example, so that there's more connection and care and communication with your customers who sometimes will end up being friends. There's that kind of respect for the work, for the equipment, and for the customer, really.
What I was talking about with that was that great customer service is a combination of things. And one of the things that is the attitude of the people. The principal people interact with here when they've made an order and they're following up are two fantastic employees, Antoine and Jill here. And they have the right attitude. Now, they've been on the receiving end of a lot of frustration because it takes so long to solve the customer's problem. We can't get them the apparatus they want when they want it. So solving that problem makes their job easier. But the other thing that makes their job easier is great tools. And modern day software, on their desktop computers is pretty simple. And it can be set up where we take our historical orders, a customer calls, if it's on their phone number, it's on their email, their order pops up and their past orders pop up. And that's super helpful for, say, Jill or Antoine to say, oh, right, you must be calling about your order from last week, last month, or 10 years ago. What can we do to help? And it's frustrating for the customer. You kind of expect us to know, but when they don't know, it's both a waste of time for both parties. And it basically turns what could be a good relationship into nothing but a hostage exchange of information. And so, what we want to try to do is bring 21st century practices to get the best of both.
I love it. It's fabulous. Super exciting. I think the listeners are on board and really excited about this next chapter. Even though you're sitting in this first chapter, it's going to be beautiful.
We're having fun. I suspect your listeners are a lot like us in the following regard. They're listening because they love classical Pilates. And many of them probably know a lot more than we do about it because they're some of the world's, greatest instructors. And probably some of the elders are on your listening list. And we hope to meet all of you in the right place, in the right time, in a way that satisfies what you're looking for from Gratz. And we'd love to hear from you, even more so after we fix the manufacturing process.
And what is the best way for them to reach out to you?
They can find us at Gratz. I'm John. She's Elizabeth. We are at gratzpilates.com. We're easy to find. And
your website, it's being revamped. It's called Gratz Pilates, not Gratz Industries. That changed pretty quickly, right?
It's Pilates. The website itself is pilates.gratz.com. And that hasn't changed. We also own the domain now, gratzpilates.com, which we're going to switch it to. That'll be invisible for our customers. New phone numbers went up this last week because they have IP phones as opposed to old phones with literally little cassette tapes. Those are gone. So every little bit, we're moving along. That was Monday last week.
Oh my gosh, you guys have been busy.
We have, but it's so fun. And like I said, the employees, when we come in every day, it makes it worth it. They're so hardworking. We just can't wait until we make some material improvement in the lead times.
Wonderful.
And it'll feel really good.
Absolutely. So exciting. John and Elizabeth, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been fun.
All Things Pilates is produced, written, edited, and hosted by me, Darian Gold. Mastered audio mix, Fabian Romero. Original music, a.k.a. Johnny. And we'd love for you to leave us a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. That way you let all of us know what you like about All Things Pilates. Also, if you're interested in helping to support this podcast, become a subscriber. It helps to cover all the back-end costs that accrue when producing a show. To learn more about how you can be part of our growing community, check out our show notes. The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. Albert Camus.